Started. Okay, cool. So welcome everyone to another Tuesday where we go over common things that I get asked about, whether it's in the gym or from feedback from clients inside the coaching group, or just people I speak to on like a regular basis about their fitness goals and that. Apologies, I haven't tested the audio. I've had confirmation that it's okay at the minute. Currently just in a Starbucks as we're always on the move, but these Zooms will always continue no matter what. So obviously the Tash game is going strong as well. We're 5 days into November and we're looking good. So right today, so well, like the first topic of the day at least, anyways, unless anything comes through, is going to be about different training methods. And you can go so far into depth with different training methods, different training styles, but I think these are kind of the four key things to go over. And it's good to change it up and always have a mix of these different styles of training. So then when you hit a plateau, or maybe you want to still improve, but sometimes just doing a heavier weight isn't always an option. So for someone who maybe you're doing squats and you're always stuck on maybe like a 50 kg squat and you can't seem to push any further, one way, rather than just saying, oh yeah, just like do heavier weight, one way that you can also change that or still progress without having to break your back or kill yourself is by doing different training methods. So that could be negative, it could be doing supersets, triceps, compound movements, and then rep ranges as well. So it's not just thinking about heavier weight, it's also about how can I utilize a lower weight, but just as effective to then still grow muscle and still get stronger. So the first one I want to touch on is negative, and then we'll go right down to kind of like the more basic stuff. So negative training, what is that? So we're focusing on what you might have heard before as the eccentric part of the movement. ECCENTRIC. Eccentric part of the movement. So that's a lowering phase of the exercise. So for example, if you're doing a squat, it'd be when the hips or the bum is reaching down to the floor. And then the concentric phase, it's the up phase, it's kind of like the explosive bit at the top. Where this changes is obviously if you're doing like a lat pull down and you're bringing the bar down to you, that would be a concentric phase because on the cable, the weight is moving up. So it's not about where our body is, it's about where the weight's moving. So when the weight moves down to the earth, that's our eccentric phase. And what we call that is the negative training. So we can still train our muscles very effectively by just doing negatives. And when would this make sense, or when would you do this style of training? For me personally, if I was doing like a bench press, or if I was doing, you probably wouldn't do it so much on squats because then you're at the lower part of the phase and then it gets a little bit sticky to then get out of that. If you're doing like a bench press or maybe a deadlift, for example, we'll run off deadlifts. So if you were, stuck on like a 110 deadlift, for example, and you wanted to hit like 115, but you're really struggling, what I would do is probably drop it down to maybe, so if 110 is like your 100% like one rep max, drop it down to like a 90 kg, and then just really focus on the eccentric phase. So nice and explosive on the way up. And then as you're lowering the weight down, just count yourself slower. So rather than like a 3-2-1, which might be your average tempo, or if you're going kind of like a 1-1 tempo, just really slowing it down. So kind of count yourself from like 8. So you kind of from the hips, and it's like an 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's just the full control of the weight the whole way down to the earth, the eccentric phase. So that puts a lot of stress on the muscles for growth. And it's another way of training without always having to up the weight, because upping the weight 24/7 is not always the best thing to do, and in certain circumstances it causes injury, right? So the more that we can control the weight, we can also see some significant progress and gains like that. And one way that I didn't notice, again, apologies if there's noise in the background, I'm not sure how much that comes through. I've got a mic on, so hopefully backs that out. But as I was talking about this one, it also reminded me of tempo. So, or changing the tempo of an exercise. So typically what you do is kind of like a 1-1, which is what we call just like your standard like tempo for sets. Or if you wanted to take a little bit slower, you could do like a 1-3. No background noise, cool. So that means the mic's working. Thank God. I usually use the other one when I'm at home, so it's nice to know this one's working. So you could do like a 1-3 tempo. So what would that mean is that, or I'd say probably like a 3-1, especially if it's eccentric or like negative training. If it's a bench press, you'd go 3-2-1, and then that one would be explosive. So it's changing the tempos of movement. Then you could do like a 3-3, where it's 1-2-3, and then 1-2-3 on the way up. So it's like so many. So not only can you just do the negative proportion if you're struggling with kind of like the explosive bit, but it's also you could control the explosive as well. So that's changing the tempos of weight as well, which is another way that we can put stresses on the muscle without having to play with the weight. And I guarantee, like, especially doing classes, sometimes you do tempo in certain exercises, it puts just as much stress on the muscle doing probably about 50% of the weight that you could usually do. It really does kill. And it's good, especially if you're on holiday, you're in hotels, doing like really slow and controlled body weight movements is a great way, whether it's in the morning or if you're on the go, or maybe you can't make it to the gym. It's a really good way to do it at home as well. So push-ups, 3-2-1, 3-2-1, way up and way down. So yeah, I could do like a little side story as well on that. So I don't know if anyone's seen like these challenges where it's like doing 100 push-ups a day and stuff. I got like probably into my 5th day, and it just got to the point of like, not that I couldn't do it, but it just felt so pointless because it just felt like I was just doing a movement for the sake of the movement. And I actually found that just slowing it down and actually focusing on the push up and really squeezing at the top and slowing it down was doing so much more for my muscles than just doing like the 100 push-ups. It was so pointless. So yeah, just really focusing on that, lowering all the eccentric and concentric part of the movement is just so important. So that's one way of changing your training methods if you're hitting a plateau or you're getting a little bit stuck. Another way of doing it is supersets and trisets. So super for 2, actually type in these boxes. So superset is 2 exercises, and then a triset would be 3. So what could you do, for example? So a typical superset would look like maybe a squat, and then that's paired with a kettlebell swing, for example. Or one that I really like doing is a leg press with a goblet squat. And there's no real rules around what a superset should or shouldn't be. The best way that you can kind of get the most from it is maybe picking 2 muscle groups that oppose each other. Without going into too much science, it's kind of the opposite or assisting muscles. So if you're doing chest, maybe you could do a tricep movement, or if you're doing, a legs, that will be mostly like the front part of the legs, the quads dominant, then maybe you do like a hamstring. But again, you can still do a superset targeting the same muscle. So you might do a chest press, have no rest, and then go straight into chest flies, for example. So again, there's no real rules around the superset, and I think that's where the training then gets a little bit fun. So maybe you're bored of just doing the single stuff, and it does get boring, and the boring stuff does get results. But just to change it up every now and then to keep us motivated, it's nice to add a little bit of fun stuff in there. So if you're doing a chest press, you can do like a chest press for 10 reps or 12 reps. I wouldn't go super heavy with the repetitions because then you're doing 2 exercises. So that kind of pairs up anyways. And then you do flies for 10 to 12 reps. And then you take your rest. And then you would do that for 3-4 sets. If it was a tricep, for example, then you would do the same thing, but you would just add a 3rd exercise on. So you could do a chest press, flies. So that would be 2 chest exercises. And then the pairing muscle or the assisting muscle to our chest is our tricep. So what I would personally do, and I think about where equipment is as well. So if I'm using like a bench and dumbbells, doing chest press, flies, I would then probably go for like a skull crusher or a tricep overhead extension. So just to put that there. And then all you would do is the same thing. So you could do like 10-10-10, or you could do like 8-8-8. Smash through those, then you take your rest. And again, it's just a little bit more of a fun way of pairing exercises together, still making progress. And I think the key bit here is it saves time. So you're in and out of a gym, maybe for anyone who works in like central London and you might have like an hour break. I've done a lot of training in London. So a lot of the workouts that I was taught was people going on breaks, like going into the gyms for like half an hour, doing their lunchtime classes and then going. So like this was like a key for that. But again, if you're on hotels, you're with the family, like you wake up a little bit earlier than the rest of the family, you've got half an hour to yourself, get down to the gym, get stuff done, then you can kind of get back when everyone's awake. So it's just knowing about when to use these different types of training. So obviously the eccentric or the negative training is going to take longer because you're taking more time during the sets. The supersets, triceps, we're doing more muscle groups or more exercises in a shorter period of time. So that's going to take less time to do, but it's going to be just as effective. And it still puts a lot of blood into those muscles. So then we go on to compound and isolation. So compound movements and isolation movements. So what is the difference? I love how it just like randomly connects these things. I really wanted another box. So compound and isolation, what's the difference? It's done it again. So compound movements is when so typically like everyone will say compound is using multiple muscle groups. What it actually means is moving two joints. So a compounded when we've been moving, so for a chest press, we're moving our elbow joint and we're using our shoulder joint. So we're using multiple joints for a movement. And isolation is where we move one joint. So that would be a bicep curl, for example, where we just move our elbow joint. And that's why machines are really good for isolation, because if it's a chest fly, for example, then we're only moving our shoulder joints because our elbow joints are pretty much locked in. So that's where machines are really good at isolation, because the pads or where things are placed isolates the muscle. Whereas on compounds, if it's a squat, then obviously we're using our hips, we're using our knees, and then you get a little bit of ankle flexion as well. So we're using multiple joints to work muscles. Compounds are going to be really good for mass of the muscle. So it's an opportunity to go heavier. So typically when I train, what I'll do is the compound is the heavy movements, and then the isolation is lighter with more reps. So this is just the way that I prefer to train, and everyone's going to have their own way of doing things. And it definitely depends on the exercise and how you feel about that as well. So a compound, squats, deadlifts, bench press, rows, typically they're going to be your heavier movements anyway, because we're using multiple muscle groups. But I would definitely prioritize that at the start of the workouts as well. There may be in some people's programs where you start with isolation, and that's more of a warm-up focus. So that's where it would be a little bit lighter as well. So if it's like a leg day, I might have like a leg extension to start. That's really focusing on just getting blood into the muscles, getting some good blood flow around the knee joints. So then when you go on to squats or a leg press, they're then warmed up for that. Or if it's compound focus first, then we just go in heavier, obviously do like a warm-up set. And that's why there might be 4 sets, because the first set is more of a warm-up, get used to it, and then you go heavy for the other 3. But yeah, compound movements will be key to really getting mass of the muscle. And then the isolation is typically, or the way that I see it, is more about that mind-muscle connection, really focusing on the muscle when all the heavy lifting is done, and getting blood flow into the right areas. So that's how you would kind of utilize the different movements. And what I can do as well, do like a little cheat sheet that I can like put into the chat later as well about what movements are isolation and what are compound. So then everyone can kind of see what's what. That might be a little bit easier as well. And then rep ranges. So when to utilize those, and because, you know, like for most people's programs, it will have a rep range. So for most people, they might see like an 8 to 10, or there might be a 12 to 15. And again, that's where it kind of links with this. So a little thing there. So compound and heavier movements. Typically, you do less rep range to then focus on heavier. So if you're in an 8 to 10 range, then you can push a little bit heavier. If it's the 12 to 15, then we're lighter, more controlled. And when we're in this phase, then yeah, we're going to have a little bit of eccentric, or we're going to change the tempo to like a 3-1, just so that we can really focus on that squeeze of the muscle and the control of the movement. Whereas when we're doing compound or heavy movements, then it's probably more like a 1-1, where it's a little bit more explosive, really putting those muscles to work. So there was another point I had in my head as well. But yeah, definitely if it's an 8 to 10 range that's more focused on the strength of the muscles and going heavier, whereas if it's a higher range, it's a little bit lighter. And again, everyone has freedom of how they do their workouts as well to an extent. You know, these are guidelines, and every day that we kind of come to the gym, we're feeling different. So sometimes the 8 to 10 isn't always going to feel appropriate. So for myself, although I have, you know, I'll have my squats, I'll have my lunges. Sometimes I'll use the squats, and I'll use that for mobility, and I'll go lighter on my squats. I'll do 12 to 15, and then I'll go heavier and I'll do my 8 to 10 on the isolation movements. So it's kind of just as much as we kind of focus on heavy compounds, you can do them light, but then maybe do some heavy isolation just to balance it out. And this is the thing, is like trying to get away from the typical stereotype of high rep ranges for losing fat, low rep ranges for gaining strength. It doesn't really work like that. Science at the minute, or what a lot of data is suggesting, is that there's not really a lot of difference, and it does depend on an individual and what their genetics are like and how their muscles are built. So having a mixture of different training styles is going to be the best way to go to make sure that no stone is left unturned and nobody misses out. So unless you actually go to like a science lab and they tell you what different muscle fiber types you have, then we're never going to know, right? We can have an idea and we'll play around with it, but it's good to have a mixture of all cases. There was another point, but I've forgotten it. If I do have anything, then it's something that I can definitely touch on another Zoom. Is there any questions about what we have here or anything? You can pop it in the chat or you can unmute. Feel free to ask if we do have anything.
Hi, Sean.
If there's no
Hi,
questions.
can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I can hear.
Oh, okay. It's just a question around the Superset tricep.
Yeah.
On the app, does it give you the combination of the different triceps and supersets? Does it mix and match it for you, or you have to try and kind of work it out
So
yourself?
so you can actually create the superset yourself on the app. So as you're, if you're going on workout of the day and you're creating your own ones, you can actually
Hmm.
just add the workouts in. What I could do is I could do a screen recording and I can send it in the chat. But for example, if you were to do like leg press, it will have like a little circle option and you can select each
Hmm.
one. You'd kind of click each one, and then in the bottom left corner, you would then select like supersets, for example,
Okay.
and then you could create your own. There should be supersets in there. Whether someone can add a superset in once it's already been programmed, I haven't actually seen yet. So that's a good question. I'll look into that myself, actually.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I'll do a screen share, but I don't want to kind of breach data protection and people's names and stuff. So,
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, I'll do like a
Cool.
little screen recording on like a fake account for the app, and then yeah, I'll do that. But if you're creating your own workout of the day or adding your own exercises, then for sure, yeah, you can do that. Um, Everyone should have freedom to be able to change their workouts if there is, because there is restrictions typically. Um, on fitness app, you can add them. Okay, cool, yeah. So
Okay.
well, she loves changing the workouts that I give her, so she's the pro.
Does she? Okay.
Um, so yeah, I lost my train of thought there, but yeah, there's definitely ways to add it and kind of do your own stuff as well. And typically it is locked, but everyone should have the freedom to change their workouts. Yeah, and some people will be banned from substituting. Um, so yeah, that's that. Hopefully that kind of answers the question. But yeah, again, and the thing is
Mm.
that if you're not able to do that, you can just add the exercise, and worst case scenario, at least it's still recorded. It might not be recorded as a superset, but then at least you know kind of what weight you've done and that.
Okay.
Worst case scenario.
Cool.
Any other questions?
No for me.
Okay,
That's
cool.
it. Yeah.
And if there is anything else, then yeah, just fly it in the group chat so you can have discussions and that. These are all pre-recorded as well, so you can watch over them. They're uploaded in a podcast style format on Spotify, so then people like listening to it, and then you can watch it back on YouTube as well. So there's always ways to
Okay.
go over these, because again, like, I don't want this just to be lost and then no one catch up. Which is probably a bad thing as well, because then people don't then end up joining the lives. They just watch it back. It's a double-edged sword, but yeah. Um, yeah, so overall good. That's kind of different training methods. Hopefully, this is enough fuel to the fire to kind of change things up, for the moment anyway. And there are a few others out there, without getting too technical. But these are like the easy ones just to be able to supplement and change up, throughout the workout, just to keep it creative and do new things. So hopefully that helped. And yeah, our next Zoom will be on Friday. Well, that will actually be pre-recorded because I'm away, down in London to work on this stuff. So yeah, that will be pre-recorded, and
Cool.
it will be about how to control your calories without tracking calories, because I know that's another big issue at the minute for most people. So we're going to talk about portion sizes and portion control, and how to still kind of effectively lose weight or gain weight without having to track every single calorie, which I think is quite helpful for most. So that'll be out on Friday. But if that's all, then yeah, we'll
Cool.
shoot, and hopefully that helped. Anyone who's
Yep.
watched back over, if you have any questions, just message me or drop a message in the chat. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.